I think we like to imagine that evil and sin is quite obvious and visible. We like to see it as kind of, it's like Dracula. You see him with the fangs bared, or Frankenstein, or these monsters. We want to see it as ugly, something that we know we're going to avoid. But that is not always the case. If that was the case, the devil has a bad marketing scheme for sin. But rather, sometimes it has its appearance as something initially good. And then we get too comfortable, and then it just comes and pounces. We sin, but then we get the accusation of the accuser himself. That's kind of what happens this is kind of the last reading that we have from Samuel during this time of the year. But if we've been following the life of David, David is like the man of doing all these things. He took down Goliath. He made the kingdom of Israel so powerful. And then earlier, I think it was last week, we had his falling to the temptation of Bathsheba. And then here now, the Lord had asked him to do a census, but not to do a census for military service. What does David do? He's like, yeah, I'll do that census, but then I'm also going to do one to check to see how we're doing on our strength and numbers for the military. Because we can do it. We need to be strong. And that, in a sense, the Lord was furious with him, because this is a really confusing passage if we kind of look at it and you're like, okay, why would God be so mad at this? It's the same reason the people of Nazareth do not believe who Jesus says he is. Because David did not have faith or trust in the Lord to do that he would provide for what was needed to protect Israel. Sometimes we can get too familiar with our own relationship with Jesus, where it's like, oh yeah, no, Jesus, I know what Jesus wants for me. And sometimes we get too comfortable that we actually lose our faith in him, because we're like, oh yeah, Jesus, we have this one image of Jesus, a comfortable image. Yes, Jesus is our friend. We're supposed to grow in our relationship and friendship with him. But we also constantly have to renew our thoughts as to who he is and who he says he is. Because we may sometimes just be like, I don't know if God can work those things in my life. But if Jesus is who he says he is, and he's God, he can transform our lives. We need to have faith and trust. And today, that's why we're doing a Mass for various reasons for the forgiveness of sins, to recognize in our own hearts, where am I getting too familiar with my sin to the point that it's drawing me away from the Lord? And ask the Lord to help us to do a good examination of our own lives. So, to be unlike David, to put our faith and trust in what God is asking us to do.